So there's been times where you've seen people, identified people, and taught about people in the way that they have exhibited a desire to control situations around them. And a lot of times we call those people control freaks. Mm-hmm. So I've been thinking a lot about that lately because I've been dealing with some control people in my life. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about, where does that come from?
Okay.
And I think that there's a root of fear in it.
Yep.
But I think it might go deeper than that. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to get your thoughts, and I have some other ideas about it. But why do you think people want to control?
That's a very broad question. Mm-hmm. What do you? How about you sum it up? Like, what are you talking about specifically? Like, are you talking about people who want to control everything, or like the people who are everybody, like the helicopter mom, helicopter dad, or just the person that wants to be controlling sometimes in certain areas? Because I think there's a spectrum.
I think people who have a controlling nature will exhibit that behavior across all areas of their life.
Yes.
At work, they're going to be the person that wants to be able to control their environment. They want to control their workflow. They want to control what other people are doing. They're going to monitor more of what's going on around them, of what other people are doing. They're going to want to have influence and input into that. At home in their relationships, if there's kids, they're going to want to know everything those kids are doing. They want to have control over that. They want to have access to all the people that those kids have access to. They want to have information from the school. They want to have information from the parents of those kids, so that they have all the information available in order to be able to manipulate a situation and control it to the place where they feel secure. In their marriage, those people are going to be. They want to know all the finances. They want to get access to all the information. They want they're going to want to have access to the phone. They're going to want all those things to be able to give them. They want an itinerary of what the other person's day is going to be. Where are you going to be? Who are you going to be with? What are you going to be doing? And so it's information that they're seeking, that they're hunting, in order for them to be able to manipulate the situations, control everything. That's going to bring them the security that will allay the fear that's driving all of that. And so I think somebody who has serious control issues, that's going to be evident in every place in their life.
I think that this goes back to a little bit of what we talked about. I think routine. I think this ties in a little bit of that. Like I think some of the same issues that people who are very routine oriented, and when their routine gets messed up, I feel like it has a little bit of that same type of thing. Like there's safety, security, some of the same DNA, but I think it's vastly different. But I think it's in this. You can kind of get the same type of sense that like I need things to happen this way, and it brings me a sense of order. And being in control is the same thing. I have a way that things are done, and if I do it this way, I'm able to see it. Everything's in a row, everything's lined up, and I'm able to see it very quickly, and I'm able to get peace from it. I definitely think it has to do a lot of sense of security, like fear of if I don't have control, what happens? Like it's out of control. Like it's out of control. I also feel that a lot of people who are, this is my opinion, and so I'm if somebody's listening and they may feel they are a little more controlling person, what I'm saying, I don't want to paint with a broad brush. I don't like doing that. Okay. But in my opinion, I feel that a lot of people who are very controlling are very short-sighted. I feel that they're very short-sighted, and so they need to control because they have a small window that they're trying to see past, and anything beyond that is the earth. That's the end of the earth. And so I feel like they're trying to control that things to keep moving, and so they're short-sighted. I have been accused of being a controlling person, but I'm only controlling in certain things because I try to control things that move the dial. Because I'm actually a very long-sighted person, so I try to set parameters in my life that are going to be predictable. So I exhibit things that I'm doing now that are going to give me reliable, predictable result 9 months from now. And so I don't have to control the day basis, but I am trying to control to get a favorable outcome. Right. And so that I feel like anybody who is a controlling person is trying to do something to get a favorable outcome. I just feel like when someone's called a control freak, they lack long-term visioning. They lack long-term long-sightedness. I don't know what you call that. Like,
right.
they're just short-sighted, and so everything is very much controlled right now. Like, I'm controlling my day, and I can only see past my day.
Yeah, but I think there's a clear distinction here that's critical. In other words, I think it's one thing to control something or to manage something
right.
for a strategic particular outcome that's desired.
And you can have some very strict parameters for that.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Like, there could be some things you want, non-negotiables.
And the people that are involved in that may feel like, okay, you're being controlling.
Oh, correct. Right.
But I think the person who has control issues,
okay,
I don't know that they have a strategic outcome. I think they just have an innate sense that I have to be in control, because if I'm in control, there's security in that.
Well, that is the outcome, though. I mean, that is their outcome.
No, but I'm thinking, like, in other words, if you say, okay, well, I want to get involved in a particular area of ministry in our church,
right?
Because there's a long-term goal that you have,
right?
In general, you would want to develop somebody to be able to lead that ministry. We would give them the parameters, and then they would just lead it. They'd have responsibility and authority within that area.
Right.
Maybe for a short period of time, we would feel like that, okay, we need to be more involved, which would feel like we need to get more control.
That is correct.
For a season of time, in order to achieve a long-term goal of releasing it again.
Correct.
A controlling person
never is going to release it.
Yeah, correct. They're never going to. They're not strategic in the sense that I just need to manage this for a little while so that I can release it.
I get you. I understand what you're talking about.
And so I think that's why I try to figure out the distinction between that.
It gets blurry sometimes.
It gets really blurry. But I think if you look at somebody's life and they're exhausting themselves,
correct,
and they're adding so much stress to their lives, because if you're married and you got 2 or 3 kids and you work and you're trying to control every aspect of your life, that is exhausting. And I just wonder, why would somebody work so hard? What is the deep-seated motivation in somebody that they just have to control the finances, the relationship, the activity, everything around them? They're constantly inserting themselves in everything that the people around them are doing in order that they might be able to feel some sense of, okay, it's gonna come out like I want.
Well, you just said it all.
Okay.
It's a lack of trust.
Okay.
It's a lack of belief. Mm-hmm. It's a lack of faith. It's fear, right? You basically, that person you described believes that they're the only one who can do it the right way, the safe way, the good way, the healthy way. Mm-hmm. And if I don't, it's going to be damaged. So like that's what I have to control.
Okay.
Like because if I give you control, then I fear that you're not going to be able to do it. And so like, because generally in leadership, like I said, we bring somebody along, we equip them. We're around them to kind of be the training wheels, the safety net to be there. But ultimately, we have the mindset that I saw in you that you will be able to take this and control it on your own. Right. When the person who is the control freak, if you want to say, I think that switch in their brain that thinks that they can identify somebody who can control, I think that they somehow have inordinate perspective on themselves to where they're the only ones who can control. That me giving it to you would be unwise because I'll be giving you something that inevitably you're going to break because only I can. And I think that's the rub. Like I can't ever entrust you to it because I don't believe that anybody's capable of doing it, but doing it my way. Or me doing it or my way also. Like, it can't be a different way. We see that all the time because controlling people have a hard time if you do it differently also. Like, you got to cut the grass, east and west, not north and south.
Right.
Like, but do we want the grass cut? Well, no, it has to be cut this way. You got to put the trash bag back in this way. Mm-hmm. We load the dishwasher this way. We park the car in this way. We go to this gas station. Like, it because like you said, it becomes everything where it's like, okay, there's more than multiple ways to get something done also.
Yeah, and I think sometimes a controlling person really has a hard time releasing
it all. Yes.
Anything, even to people who can do what they're trying to get done better than they can.
That's what I'm talking about. It's a lack of self-awareness.
And I guess that's the problem for me is, okay,
Yes.
if I've hired somebody to do something,
Correct.
I'm hiring them because I can't do it.
Right.
And so if then I try to control what I've hired them to do that I can't do,
AKA micromanaging.
micromanaging, but it's I have to be involved. And if I'm not involved, it's going to go.
But then why did you hire that person in the first place?
And that's the whole thing for me is what level, like what's deep inside that says everything around me is broken, and if I'm not watching every little thing, then there's going to be chaos, and I can't deal with the chaos.
It's actually delusional. Like when you keep talking about it,
Right.
like I know we do it, but I'm saying, think about that. Well, you keep saying like, why would you even think that that's even possible? Because now you're basically saying that you're perfect in all things, and if you're not there,
Yes.
it's not going to happen. As if you can't miss it as well. Like it's like you, like so. Let's say you're the person that has this idea, and so you're watching me do something. So you're basically, or like we're doing a sermon, and you want to say, "Hey, Brandon, before you put anything out, let me look at it." You're basically saying that you would be able to catch every mistake I made.
Right? Yes.
I mean, that doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense.
Right.
Like that can't happen.
I mean, I could, but-
I know. Well, yes, you could, but that's why you see books on the shelves
Yeah.
that have typos. They had an editor, they have proofreading, they have final draft, and they still make it on all bookshelves with the
Right.
with two periods.
Right. Yep.
Because it just you can't. Nobody's perfect. And I think that idea you're trying to say, which makes it seem more like the more you keep talking about it, the more you keep saying it's delusional to be like, yeah, you hire somebody or you go to somebody, but like you want to fact check that person. Like to me, it's always like, I'm fine with getting second opinions, right? But I've heard people who've been like, yeah, my knee is hurt. I'm on my fourth doctor. I'm like, what? I mean, you don't know it at all. At what point are you going to realize that that you went there for the first time?
Right.
Like they're a doctor. Like I don't need to have 7 opinions. Like if 2 doctors say I need to get surgery on my knee, the third's probably going to say it. Like he's a specialist. You know what I'm saying? And like, why do I think that I would know better? And I feel like the person who is a super control freak thinks that somehow they know better than everybody else. And I feel like that is a form of delusion.
And the I guess the extension of that is that if you set yourself up, because it's deeply insightful, if you set yourself up as I'm actually the authority,
Yes.
even though I've hired you, and on the surface it looks like I've given you authority,
Right.
then I've automatically set myself up in an antagonistic relationship with you. Because I've set myself up as the expert.
So what do you mean by antagonistic in that perspective?
In other words, then I'm only going to be looking at you and your work critically.
Yes, got you. 100%.
And so anything that's a little like that I don't understand
Yep.
means I'm not controlling it, means it can't be right.
Exactly. That is so true.
And so if it can't be right, then you're at fault.
Because I don't understand.
Because I'm not okay with
That
it.
is so true.
And so if I'm controlling it,
Yes.
my personality does not deal well with that type of personality.
Yes.
Because I'm more of a long-term thinker. I'm more of a strategist. I can see the big picture. I'm not going to get upset about a little detail today because I know there's always a solution.
100%.
And so you can always figure a way forward. And I just feel like I have a great faith that God's going to go before me and do what needs to happen, and I'm going to go through some difficult things, and I get it. But ultimately,
Yeah.
it's going to be okay.
Right.
And so I just don't get that worked up about stuff or feel like I have to control everything. I love to be able to empower people to do stuff on my behalf, and then just trust that they're going to do it. That's I don't know. I just feel like sometimes. And what that does for me when I'm able to do that is I'm able to have relationships with people. Like as a general contractor doing some of that work, I have really good relationships with my subcontractors because I talk to them about the scope of work. We come to some conclusions, and then I just release them to it. And sometimes I don't even talk to them about it because they know what to do. They know more about it than I do.
Yes.
And so I have some overarching knowledge,
Yes.
and I know what I want done. But I'm not a trained HVAC person. You know, I might have an opinion about whether the air handler needs to go under the crawl space or up in the attic space. But ultimately, I'm going to trust the expert's ability to be able to do that work. I'm not going to micromanage how they're connecting the duct work. You know, those kinds of things. But then there are people who would do that. There are contractors I know who are like micromanaging, and the subcontractors talk about that. They have negative interactions with those type of control freaks, and they don't want to do work for them. And I can get a lot out of my subcontractors simply because they know I'm empowering them to do the job, and I'm treating them as human beings, and I'm not trying to be controlling. And it's just fascinating to me to watch the people who are really controlling. They have a hard time with relationships with all the people around them, because they just typically will drive people away. Because if I'm always putting responsibility on you and not giving you any authority, which is the thing we talk about a lot, then a lot of people are not going to stay in those kinds of relationships.
Not only do they have a hard time with relationships physically, they have a hard time with the spiritual relationship.
Yes.
Because it's what you said before, is that when it comes to the end of my knowledge, when I don't know or I don't understand it, then it must be wrong. That does not work when it comes to faith.
Right.
And just think about that, right? We're like, a lot of us want to control, but then we know some people are very controlling by nature. If you're a person that's controlling by nature, you have a hard time, because faith is submitting to Christ. It's admitting that you don't know anything. It's really admitting that left to your best devices, you're going to take your life straight to hell. And so, but you feel like you have the best for your life. So like that's already at odds with you, right?
Yeah.
And so the thing is that, your opinions, like I feel like that's what's really difficult with people in our culture today, is that we're more and more self-governing, more and more I'm in control. It's all about me. It's my story. I'm speaking my truth. We're more and more that.
Right.
And that's why Jesus becomes more and more harder to really understand, because he really is saying it's not really about you. You're not really all that. Like, you're not the guy, right? You're not that. Yeah. Like, you're not the girl, right? Like your ways are actually foolish. You actually are delusional. You actually are headed in the wrong direction.
Right.
You are making poor choices. It is not the way. And I feel like that's what's so difficult for people, is because we're so full. The person who is in it, the person who is the control freak is so full of themselves that they become delusional to think that they're perfect. But we all have a little bit of that delusion. We all have a little bit where we're too full of ourselves. And I feel like that's the sin of the garden all the time, is that the serpent, represented of Satan, the devil, wanted to be God. He wanted to be the final authority on all things.
Yep.
And he offered the woman and the man an opportunity to be just like God, being the final authority in all things. That is what we long for in our flesh and in our brokenness. And unfortunately, as I always say, we're all broken, some just differently. We come across people who are just that delusional to think they are God, and they want to show that in how they treat you.
Yeah, and that's a deeply broken person.
It is.
I mean,
and they're dangerous.
I think that's. I think the more I've been thinking about this issue lately, excuse me, the more I realize how deeply broken that person is, who feels like that they are ultimately better at everything than everybody else is. And they're not saying that out loud,
of course,
but with their actions, that's what they're saying. And so I don't know. I grieve for people that are like that, because it has to be exhausting to be the expert and to be better and smarter than everybody else. And I know some people will disagree on the idea of, in other words, I'm sure there's those who have studied this psychologically, and that there are some root issues maybe in childhood where maybe chaos at home led to an individual growing up with a sense of everything's out of control.
Correct.
My home life is out of control.
Yes.
And so as they develop into an adult, they begin to try to control the things that they feel like they can control, and then that just morphs into everything in their life.
Right.
And so there's probably some ways with some appropriate reflection and therapy and prayer that somebody could begin to set aside some of those tendencies.
Some of that trauma. Yeah.
But I was listening to Matthew McConaughey be interviewed on a podcast, which I know is shocking to you. But he said something that which made me think about exactly what you just said.
First of all, isn't Matthew McConaughey a real cool dude?
He's one of the coolest guys there is.
Like, he's just really cool.
And one of my favorite actors. He's had some of the best lines in
All right.
The closing argument in A Time to Kill.
Oh man,
it's like one of the best things you've ever seen ever.
Oh, gosh.
But anyway, he's a very interesting person.
Yeah,
he thinks about things deeply. But he was talking about this idea of control, and he's like, really, he said, let's think about it. He said, life going forward is a mystery.
Okay.
Life behind us is a science. He said, in other words, the slight.
That was some bar. Like, yeah. I was trying to let that slide, but I was like, that was profoundly deep.
Yes.
I looked over and me and Brock were looking to like what it was.
And
like,
when he said it, when he said it, I actually paused.
Wow.
I paused the podcast.
Say it again.
He said, life in front of us is a mystery. Man. Life behind us is a science.
Dude, that's fantastic.
And he said, think about it. He gave the example of if you get caught for 30 extra seconds at an intersection and you're late to the restaurant that you were going to, and you walking in and there's this woman who's walking out and she says good morning and you say good morning, and next thing you know you're dating, next thing you know you have kids, like 30 years down the road you look back to that 30-second delay as maybe there was something to that's science, that was part of the plan. He said, whereas going into it, you're frustrated because the mystery before you is what's about to happen. You don't understand it. Yeah. He said, and we try to, he said, the problem is we try to science what's in front of us instead of just embracing the mystery and operating with faith and with wonder about what is to come.
Yeah.
And yes, we can look back and analyze like how we got there and be and see all the pieces, but going forward, life is just it's a mystery. And so like, if you understand that, then the reality is we can't control. We literally can't. So the thing that the control freak is trying to do is really impossible. And so it's an exhausting way to live life, but it's also an impossible thing that you're trying to accomplish. The very thing that you are consumed with is an actual impossibility, and you can't control it. And so if you're not going to be a person of faith about what is to come, then you're basically saying, I am God, back to the garden, and I'm just going to control this thing until I breathe my last. And man, what a miserable way to live life. If you can just say, I'm gonna embrace the mystery to come, and I'm gonna trust that God is in control of the mystery.
Yeah, I always thought that it was so ridiculous, the phrase, well, if you want it, you can pry it from my cold dead hands. If you want it, you can pry it from my cold dead hands. Sir. And I chuckle with that because we use that as a funny thing because we know it's not really good. Right. Like whenever you use that to somebody, it's normally a joke because you shouldn't do that, right? But we know that people think that way and thought that way a lot of times, and we've hopefully tried to get better, and we talk about wanting to pass it on, and we know now as leaders, it's much better to have an open hand than the closed fist. Like we're trying to get that. And I feel like that we're talking about that you don't have to hold on so tight to everything. Like you should be able to let it be there, let it loose. And it's just like I just feel that way with relationships, with parenting, is that you need to just have an open hand. And like I just feel like some people feel like, well, if I open it up, I'm gonna lose it. It's gonna go. It's gonna jump out. It's kind of like if you're trying to hold the butterfly, right? Like you're a little kid, you want to have the butterfly or the beetle, whatever. You got to keep it because you know it's gonna leave, and so we want to hold it. But like, isn't it the beauty of like if you open it up and like the butterfly just stays there on its own accord, like it stayed there.
Yeah,
like that's what's so much better. And I think that when you control things, you miss that you never get the fullness of the fact that like your kids chose to come or with you, that your spouse chose, that your family chose, that your coworkers they chose. It wasn't they felt trapped, they couldn't, but they chose. Like I love the relationship I have with the staff because like we've invested in it open-handed that we have a true relationship. It's not just I'm your boss, like I'm your friend. You know, we deeply love each other, and I just feel like when you micromanage and you control and it's dictatorship, you might get things done, you might move the dial, and you might have people's attention, and you might have their will because you do something, but you never have their heart.
Wow,
and I think
yeah.
that's the difference for me, is that a controlling person never really has the heart. And to me, that's what's more important.